Ready? 3, 1, 2, 3. Pitbull was a fight anyway. POC people, but namely white people.
You must hate yourself. You must actually hate yourself.
And that's why you need to really know God for yourself, and you need to know what is really for you. There are thousands of people applying to the same course, but it was enough for me to completely question my entire purpose.
This will try. He's on the phone.
You turn around, babe.
Hey guys, welcome to Natasha's Narrative. If you're a constant viewer, welcome back. So today we're going to be doing a Q&A regarding the MMI, and this is my co-host for today, and she's just going to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Anusha. I'm at my GK team on Instagram, and I've also got a YouTube channel. I'll put that somewhere down below.
Yes, all the social media will be down below, so you can give her a cheeky little stalk if you like.
Yeah, you're not going to find much, but yeah, we move.
To be honest. So, like I said, today we're going to be talking about going through the questions that you guys sent us on our individual channels and Instagram pages as well. And before we get into these kind of questions, we're just going to introduce ourselves, kind of talk a little bit about our story and how we found interview season. So, because I'm a polite person, I'm going to let Anusha go first.
Okay, so I'm Anusha. I applied to King's. I'm an undergraduate student, so I applied right after my A-levels. And I think it's safe to say the process has been different for everyone this year, specifically because COVID kind of became big around interview season. So luckily, not luckily, but coincidentally, I had my interview right before COVID blew up. So I was able to go onto campus and see the circuit and move around normally. But I'd say that at the time everyone was quite anxious, so a lot of people had their interviews online, and I think that sort of changed things for everyone. But overall, I still say it was my favourite interview process out of all of them, just because it was MMI. So we'll be going through the structure of that later on. But yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, so as some of you guys know, if you've watched my other video talking about my long journey to medicine, I am not as young as Anusha is, even though I know we look the same age.
Obviously.
Don't hate, that don't crack. But anyway, so I have, I can't even remember how many interviews I've done, but quite a lot. But the most important interview season obviously was last year. So I managed to do 3 MMIs, and obviously at Warwick, Newcastle and King's. And I think I think by the time I had done my interviews at King's, the pandemic hadn't hit the UK as hard, so everything was pretty kind of normal, which obviously, like Anusha's already said, is extremely different to what's kind of going on this year. So we're going to spend some time talking about that kind of online interview process, but obviously we're going to also go over kind of the generalized interviews and what you guys should be kind of ready for, because I think it doesn't only just help prep you for the interviews, but also when you get into medicine.
School, because every year you're going to have stages where you have some sort of interview or an OSCE, which you'll find out about later on. So I feel like it's really useful to have these techniques down now, so that you can just develop on them more as you go throughout medical school.
Yeah. So first we're going to discuss kind of the overall structure of the MMI, so that you guys have more of an idea of what it's about if you don't already know. So the MMI tends to be, well, depending on the university that you go to, about, I would say, an average of 6 to 8 stations. And again, normally if you have a smaller amount of MMI stations, you have longer stations, and the more stations that you have, they normally end up being a bit shorter. So King's, I believe, had 7?
They had 7 stations. They were roughly about 7 minutes long, and that's minus the time where you get to sit outside and wait for your next station. So I think that's roughly the average time that you have, but again, it depends on the university. I don't know much because I only did 1 MMI interview out of my options, but you can...
Yeah, so every university was slightly different, because I've sat MMIs before this kind of successful year that I had. Some universities, when you go to, I would say it's kind of like a pre-station or the waiting time, you're able to have a detailed kind of read of what's going to happen in that next station. But for a lot of universities, you don't get that. It will just kind of be blank, and you're just standing looking at a wall, trying not to laugh. But, and some,
which I'm failing right now. But we do.
honestly. And some universities, they just kind of give you sort of keywords as to what the section might be about. So it might be, this is an ethical station, or this is a role play, or a team.
And usually with King's, it's like, obviously it'll be different this year, but usually you go in and they give you a sheet, and then sometimes they'll ask you follow-up questions. So if there's something that you haven't covered that they want you to cover, they'll ask you. So don't ever feel like, oh, I haven't said enough, or I haven't covered the points, because most of the time they'll make sure that you cover the points depending on how quickly or how slowly you talk and how much you answer, basically.
Definitely. So I just wanted to ask your opinion, actually. What is the one thing that you kind of wish you had known before you interviewed, especially for MMIs?
One thing I'd say is that it is literally like a general conversation. Like, I think the one big difference from panel is that with panel you're with about 3 or 4 people and it's like a 20-30 minute interview, because my other 3 options are panel. So the difference with MMI is that you have 7 minutes to sort of communicate and have a normal discussion with this person. So I was really stressed before I went in, because I was like, oh no, I have to make 7 different impressions on 7 different people. But the thing is, right, between stations, they're not going to know how you've done. So if you feel like you mess up a station and it's going to stress you out, don't worry, the other 6 people have no idea how you've done. So for me, that really helped, because if there was a station that I found difficult, I went, you know what, it's just one station, I've got another 6 chances to go, and I can talk about the same things again and again. So I'd say, if you feel like you've said something before and you kind of didn't want to say it how you wanted to, say it again, but elaborate your answer and improve it, because who knows, that could be the difference between what makes you stand out from the other candidates. But yeah, I'd say just be confident with what you want to say, and don't be afraid to say it twice. Because of how many MMI interviews you've done, what would you say would be the take-home message from it? So, like, what do you think is the main tip you'd give people when preparing for MMI interviews?
I would say the best kind of preparation that I received was definitely with one of my friends. I'll redirect you to his Instagram page, because he's really helpful as well. So when I went to Newcastle, he's actually a Newcastle medic, and he took out literally the whole day to help me and go through the questions. And that prep, I think, is really, really important, because you see the way that you answer things. And I don't think it's essential to do it with a medic or a med school student if you don't know anyone, but just having someone to go through it with, because they can see things like body language. Body language is so underrated and not understood within like the realm of interviews. You kind of like, if I'm talking to someone in an interview and they're being like, so I think that I would do this, and you can't maintain eye contact, you're mumbling, you're fidgeting, I'm going to be like, I don't know if this person has the right characteristics. So I would say to remember that body language is pretty much nearly as important, if not the same level, as what you're actually saying. And I think also when I was actually at the interview, I used to have this really I wasn't like Anusha, how she was like, oh yeah, you know what, the next station, forget about it. I was here doing mathematical statistics. I was like, this one failed, that means I only have 6 to go. That means these 4 have to be amazing. And it puts so much stress on yourself that you are most likely to end up doing badly, because you're freaking out and you're thinking, this is my last chance, this is my last chance, this is my last chance. And I would say, even if you have only one interview, even if it doesn't go well, like, or you feel like it's not going that well, don't put that pressure on yourself on this is my last chance, because there's always more than one chance.
Like with me, my first interview happened to be the most difficult one. So with Cambridge, it was a case of like, it completely threw me off. Like, I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? And I had my King's interview 3 days after Cambridge. So that's when I kind of went with the mentality that, just trust yourself and just start over. They don't know you had an interview 3 days ago, so why do you need to let them know that you're nervous and you had an interview 3 days ago? So I feel like, even though it's easier said than done, just sort of try to have like a clear mindset when you go in, and just trust that you know enough. There's a reason you got to interview. They think you're a good candidate, so just show yourself off.
I think that's exactly the right, that's the fantastic point to end on with this. It's, you have been chosen for a specific reason, your grades must be on point, your personal statement must be on point. So basically the reason why you interview is to make sure you're not a catfish. Essentially, that is literally it.
It's okay, we move. Essentially not
It's
catfish.
actually to make sure that you're not a catfish.
Yeah.
They want to make sure that what you've written on paper is how you actually present yourself in person.
Also with like a degree with medicine, you have so many soft skills that you can't get across in a personal statement. For example, empathy, sympathy, compassion. So I feel like that is the perfect time for you to show that, I can do all of this, but I can also think and I can also be there for people, which is really important in medicine, as well as other like degrees that require you to have interviews. So the next question that a lot of people asked was that in terms of MMI stations, which one did you think was the hardest one to approach?
For me, personally, I don't even know why I'm laughing now, because it's actually not funny. And I feel like a lot of people have this problem as well. For me, it's role play. So I remember, like, I actually had PTSD of my first role play situation. So this was when I was in my gap year, and this was the only interview I had. And I remember, so basically it was a role play type of scenario, obviously. Obviously I can't, digress what the question actually was. But essentially, the person that I was role playing with was literally just giving me one-word answers. I was like, "Are you okay? Yes. Are your family okay? Yes." And I was like, it was like pulling teeth. And I was like, obviously, now I know that they wanted to see kind of like resilience. Can I keep on going when, someone is not able to...
Compassion and empathy, even though they're not giving it back to you.
Exactly. Am I able to kind of make that person feel comfortable? But it threw me off so much that it was a 5-minute station. I tried to talk for 2 minutes. The rest of the time I sat there, and I remember the guy being like, the guy who was doing the observations being like, "Are you finished?" And I was like, "Yeah." Like I just went blank because I was so...
It can throw you off sometimes because you're like, have I completely messed this up? Or is this how it's meant to be?
Oh no, that was messed up.
Okay.
That was definitely messed up.
Right, okay. No, but it is difficult, and I feel like sometimes, no matter how difficult it is, just keep pushing through it. Think of it like, okay, this is 5 minutes where I literally, even if I'm given the most difficult task, I just have to get through it,
100%.
Even if you feel like you're butchering it up, just get through it because, or just sit, if you think you're done, that's okay.
If you think, there are some times where you are actually done and you feel like you've gone through a task really, really quickly, and that is fine. But for me, I knew that I'd messed up because I literally asked 2 things in the space of 2 minutes. But anyway, so when I was then prepping later on, I found that sometimes I'd feel either like a bit awkward or I would like end up laughing because of the awkwardness, and it was... I felt, and I know I'm not the only one because I've had actually people talk to me about this as well, and it's kind of like, how do you get yourself to a point where you're not laughing out of awkwardness, so that they see that like you're able to take these type of situations seriously. I think the best way to to think of it is kind of to pretend that this is actually happening, I guess.
Put yourself in their shoes. Literally put yourself in their shoes, because that's also taking off empathy for them, which is a big thing.
Big thing, for all universities, empathy is a key thing, and I think, literally what Anusha said, put yourself in their shoes, so that you're able to kind of have that connection, and that should kind of help to withdraw the laughs, because I think especially when I was when I was practicing with this friend, the way this guy was acting was so over the top, I was cracking up, and my interview was the next day and I was like, I can't be doing this, so I think that's a really good tip actually. So for you, Anusha, what would you say is the station that you remember the most?
So for me, as you know, if you do know me, I'm a waffler. So usually filling up 7 minutes isn't an issue for me, but there was this one station where it was describe a picture to someone who's never seen the picture before. So I just sat there and I was like, gosh, this is the most simple picture I've ever seen in my life. How am I going to spend 7 minutes talking about it? So then what I sort of did was I just took it segment by segment. So I was like, this square has this in it, so let me talk about this. But I kid you not, even then I finished and I just sat there and I was like, I can't possibly think of anything else to say. So there are going to be situations where, you feel like you're stating the obvious, but just state the obvious, because sometimes for some people what you think is very obvious could be, something they didn't see before. It's always looking at things from a different perspective. So as long as you're stating everything you possibly can, then that's okay. But also, again, emphasizing Natasha's point, if you finish early, that's okay. I think there wasn't a single station where I actually took up the entire 7 minutes. There was not. I sat there and I just felt so bad. I was like, oh no, have I not answered this properly? But that's okay, because sometimes the interviewer themselves will have personal questions to ask you that aren't part of the criteria, which you can then answer.
Yes, no, I was thinking about that, because that's why I was like, have I ever, I just went into Dreamland. I remember one of my interviewers, we finished our section, and then, because I mentioned Uganda, because that's where I'm like from originally, well, my parents' heritage, but yeah, so he started asking me about Uganda. He was like, "Is it nice? I've always wanted to go." I said, "Yeah." And we started talking about it. Honestly, it's actually so fun, and it makes you feel good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm going to say this, but I busted out a convo with all of the interviewers at the end. So again, it's like, that's why I'm saying it's like a normal conversation. So, you know, just think of it as a normal conversation with someone who has the same interest in the subject that you want to do. Because if you think of it like that, then you really can't go wrong. And even if you do go wrong, that's okay. People go wrong. People make mistakes, you know.
Exactly.
It's just about how you pick yourself up after.
And you have to, because that's essential in medicine, and they want to see that as well. You know.
Because let me be real for a minute. You're gonna get a lot of hurdles in medicine. How many have we had in the first term? Let's not talk about it. Anyways,
too much. Let's not scare them. Let's get them to actually go to their interviews.
But I'm saying that, like, that's why they're testing resilience so much, because it's a case of once you enter medicine, it's so rewarding, but there's also a lot of hurdles you have to go over. So if you do face one, that's fine.